All right, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. Here is Micah with you for a few minutes. Maybe you want to just hear a little bit of a comparison of my thoughts, my personal thoughts on this comparison between these two phones. Right, these are probably two of the main flagships right now. They've been pretty, there's been a lot of buzz about them since I think this one came out in this year of 2024. This one came out just a little bit like late 2023. The S24, the Samsung S24, the regular size, right? The standard, the smaller size one, the just the S24, and the Google Pixel 8, right? The Google Pixel 8, right? The two most popular smaller size flagships right now. Right now, they both have their Max and their Pro or whatever versions. Ultra, the Samsung 24 Ultra, and those are great for those people who want those kinds of phones. But just these two phones right here, like you say, what would I pick and why? I'm just giving you the differences that I've noticed for having after having both of them for at least a couple few months, and the S24, you can see the color of these two phones. This one's got that kind of olive green. This one here is just this kind of cream colored kind of deal. And my first impressions, well, they both feel like very good premium quality builds to these phones, right? They both seem to be just about the same size. I don't know the exact specs on them, but if I'm looking at them, they're basically like just about exactly the same size, right? So they feel similar in the hand, and they're both easy to hold in a sense. But yeah, what would I choose and why, right? Like so they are pretty comparable phones in many levels. Um, Now I'm not going to get all in detail about every little spec, like you said, because I don't know every detail, and I'm just giving you my user experience, right? Now with the S24, okay, but like the S24. Now, when I first got the S24, it feels kind of thin in the hand, right? So they both feel fairly thin, but this Google Pixel has this camera bar, right? If you're familiar with this camera bar, it sticks out a little bit on the top. So that makes the overall profile generally just a little bit thicker, right? But other than that, it's about probably the same thickness in terms of how thick they are, right? It's hard to really see a comparison there, but they feel similar in the hand. Other than that, the bevels around the sides, the edges, do feel different because this one is on the S24. It's more square, right? It's got this more of a like the iPhone type of look to it, right? Whereas this one here is the Pixel 8's more rounded, right? It's got that rounded bevel. They both feel good, but I must say that like for me, I kind of have to admit I kind of like this flat feel. Now, there's other fields I liked. I used to have an LG G6. Maybe you're familiar with this phone. When LG was making phones, they had the LG G6. And as a matter of fact, it seems to be right at about the exact same size as this S24. And that was a great phone for a good number of reasons. It had a headphone jack. Now, at the same time, it wasn't the same level of a chip like this Snapdragon chip. So, an older chip, I don't know what, it was an Exynos or a Snapdragon or what, but that LG G6 was a pretty good phone, right? And I like that phone because of the size as well was a big deal, right? But also as well, now the Google Pixel 8, like I said, the Pixel 8 is a really great phone. It feels snappy, it's powerful. Now, as far as like the cameras, for example, this is one area I would say that, for example, the Google Pixel 8 does seem to have a pretty good camera, right? But at the same time, the S24 has a great camera too. Now, to know every little feature is hard to give you a total comparison, but with the Pixel 8, I would say it does feel a little snappier when taking a shot, for example. I feel like it's just taking that shot like just it's solid, right? And the S24 is not like, it's anything like noticeably less, but I would just say it's just slightly a slight hair of a difference of a feel to that. Right now, as far as the bevels around the sides here, like I said, this one feels like kind of a clean square feel. I have to say, I probably kind of prefer holding this in terms of the feel of holding these phones. Right? Which one do I prefer to feel holding in my hand? Well, like you said, as far as the size, they feel very similar, right? So that's not a huge issue. But the flat bevels around the side, if I first feel of this phone, like I said, it felt kind of thin. It almost felt a little cheap of a build. and there was like a little bit of glue when I first got this phone around the lenses. I kind of thought maybe these are going to fall apart or something, but then I saw it was just a little bit of, something residue from something that was left over there. But when I wiped it off, it came off, and it turned out to be a pretty, feels like a pretty good build. Like this is just one piece of like aluminum, I believe, and there's no seam there. It's just a bent, it's just a bend there at the seam. It's not a There's no seam. It's seamless. So it's just like one piece of metal all the way around, right? So it does have a good case build, in my opinion, based on that, right? This one here is, and this one feels reasonable in the hand. It's a little smooth. I'd kind of like to have a slightly matte type of feel, but at the same time, I want something that looks premium, and this does look and feel pretty premium, right? It feels pretty solid, right? This one also feels pretty premium, but it's got this glossy, kind of really glossy back, right? So to me, I'm not real crazy about that real slick, glossy back feeling, which maybe you could show some fingerprints with some different colors. This doesn't really, in my opinion, doesn't really show much in the way of fingerprints with this olive color on here. It's not bad. If I get used to it, yeah, it feels decent in the hand. I'd put my finger right here, maybe to hold it up. But it's possible I could block this camera, like especially if I'm using this back camera when I'm taking a shot, like just out, to whatever I'm looking at. It's not like it's very likely to happen, but maybe for some person, you're using one hand over the other or something like that, you might accidentally interfere with your camera. A little bit more likely with this one, I think, than with this S24, where the camera is just more totally to the side, right? So this is a slight little nuance thing. Not real crazy about this camera bar, right? In my opinion, this should just be a flat back. I don't really see any purpose. I'm not sure exactly why Google does this, right? It's not like it's a total game. Like if I would certainly use this phone. It's not like it's a bad phone. It's a great phone. But I would prefer to not have that bar on the back, right? And even though with this one here, with this camera here, that's kind of offsetting, if you put this on the table, it's going to be like, a little bit offset because of those cameras. It's not going to just lay flat on the table, right? This one here is a little bit different. It's got the bar, but it is even all the way across. So if you set it down, it's not wobbly, right? So that's kind of a nice factor to that in terms of, now like I said, with this LG G6 that I used to have a camera in the back, double cameras or whatever, but it didn't protrude at all. It was just a totally flat, like glass backing. That's what I really prefer, right? But this is not bad at all. I'm fine with this. Like I said, although I prefer it to lay kind of totally flat, but I can put this in a case and it'll, like this case right here. I have just a real thin case I got like from China. It was like $3, right? So actually, I kind of like this case more than I thought, and it just I can put it right in here, and I'm not putting it all the way in here right now, but it doesn't really feel like I have a case on there, right? But it's so thin, and it's very inexpensive, but take a little while to get here. So, but there's other cases, you might have this is a case for this Google Pixel 8, right? And it's a little thicker. It's got a nice ring on the back, which I kind of like this design a bit, even though I really kind of like the idea of the thin type of case as well. I put a ring on the back of this one. It's not as good as this ring, right? This ring, and I got these two off of like eBay or Amazon or something. I think eBay. And this one like came from like Japan or China or something like that. With this one, I probably got here in the States, maybe like $10 or something. So just some case ideas you can get for cheap, unless you're buying from whoever you get your phone from, probably $30-40. So in my opinion, I like to buy those a little bit aftermarket on those accessories. But as far as the phone goes, like you said, as far as the holding it, yeah, I'd have to say this one here, I would prefer to hold this because it feels like a thinner, smaller, sleeker phone, right? This one just feels a little bulkier. Just a little bulkier with that camera bar sticking out, and maybe a little bit more weight to it. I'm not sure if it weighs more. It might possibly weigh a drop more, but they don't necessarily, it's nothing I can really discern for sure just by holding it. Now, with this Google Pixel 8, It's got this, this tensor chip. It's pretty snappy. Like I said, I use the camera. It's gonna take a shot real, nice and snappy shot. But they both do. It's not like there's any highly noticeable difference. But this Google Pixel 8 does seem to have some pretty good features inside of the camera. And it also does seem like it possibly takes better nighttime shots, right? Than this one, but I haven't done a very good comparison on that. That's just what I sensed by when I opened it up and I've used it just a little bit. So might have some advantages, some pros and cons on those cameras, but both overall very good, right? Both overall very good on the camera from what I've done so far with them. But another thing I've noticed about this Google Pixel 8 is that it seems like it's set up more exclusively, almost practically like it's made for someone that's left-handed. Now you can see these little menu bars. You might want to use like gesture navigation. A lot of people like to use that, but I still like to, and I think some people still like to use these buttons at the bottom that you can get, where a back button and a button to go back to your main menu and to open and navigate your apps, etc. And I like to have those buttons there. I like to have a back button. Now in this one here, you can see it's actually on the left side of the phone, right? Now, some phones, they do this, differently. This one here, I haven't really found a feature where you can reverse these. So it seems like it's just, if you do have these buttons on here, which I'm sure you can remove them and put just gesture navigation only, you might prefer that. But if you do have these buttons on here, you don't seem to be a way to reverse them. Where with this one, and like I said, this back button is on the left side. From my perspective, I feel like that's kind of more designed for like a left-handed person or something. It's, like I like to have my back button right close to my thumb. That's just me. Everybody has their own preferences, but on Samsung, you can see these have a similar type of buttons at the bottom if you have the navigation buttons on there, but you can reverse them, right, for one thing. So it's not like it's just exclusively one way. But also another thing too is the buttons on the side of this phone, right? Now you can see this on the Pixel 8, the volume is on the bottom where the power is on the top, and on the S24 it's the other way around. The volume's on the top and the power's on the bottom. I do generally find myself used to a more preferable of this design. Now even on the LG G6 I was talking about, the buttons were actually on this side. I didn't have a problem with that necessarily either, but I think that was probably the same way where the power button was on the bottom. So, not saying that that's bad or anything. Just for me, I just find that's what I'm more comfortable and used to is this. So you can kind of tell where I'm going with this. Probably, it's not that the Pixel 8 is bad. Certainly feels like a nice, snappy, powerful, great phone, but overall, in using both of these phones and navigating through apps, and not really so much doing many in the way of games, much in the way of games, but just navigating the few apps that I use, which a couple of them are fairly demanding. I have found that with the S24, there doesn't seem to be virtually any lag. Right, I haven't noticed virtually any lag. Right now, with this Google Pixel 8. Occasionally, I will notice some stutter or lag, and I will even get, maybe a little window that comes out and say, it's telling me, hey, close this or wait, or close this app or wait for it to respond, right? And that's, in my opinion, not a good thing, right? I'd like to not get that if we can have, a phone that doesn't get that. So far, I don't think I've even noticed that once with this phone. Right, this S24, where with this, I've gotten that a couple times and some little bit of lag or stutter in some areas, right? Nothing major, like, you'll still be feeling like this is a great phone, and, you'll probably still feel like this is a killer phone, but, that's just something that I've noticed. This seems to be a little bit more responsive. Now, another thing, too, is I think the refresh rate might be higher on this S24. I think it goes up to 120 hertz screen refresh rate, where I believe this one might only go to 60. Don't quote me on that. You might double check those stats, but overall this would possibly give you a little bit of a smoother scrolling experience, right? Because you're on a higher refresh rate, and when I scroll through this, it scrolls nice and buttery smooth and fast. You can kind of get a little bit, very fast and goes up and down quickly. This one here probably is just as good. I haven't really done a big comparison, but I almost feel like I'm noticing a difference. Like this one's just a touch. It's not quite as responsive to this scrolling, it seems like. But I could be wrong. Maybe you can see what's going on here, see how that looks. It's like going up, it's not bad. This one here, on the other hand, let's see. Whoops. Wait, let's go back here. There's not like anything you probably noticed in this video, but I feel like this one's scrolling a little bit faster. Just a little bit faster and smoother, possibly because of that. So that might be a difference with the refresh rate on the screen, right? Now, another thing, too, I'm not crazy about with the Pixel 8 is that the way they seem to have put their Google Pixel search bar here, where you don't seem to be able to move it. Now, maybe there's a feature, a way to move it I'm not aware of. Maybe you know, and please leave a comment. Let me know what your comparisons are between these two phones. But like I said, there doesn't seem to be a way to change the location of this Google search bar, which I'm not real crazy about. I don't really want it very at the bottom myself. I'm not saying it's like you can't get used to it, but I'd really rather have some other buttons down there. I'd rather be able to put some app icons down there, like on the S24, where say I got some app icons down there, and I can have the Google search bar wherever I want. I can move it around. I can put it up here. So I'm not sure if I'm missing something about that. Seemed like it should be able to be moved around. I'm sure it probably can. And I probably just haven't tinkered with it enough. I want to see if it maybe gives me something like that, but I don't really see an option for that. But like I said, I'm not saying it doesn't have good options, but that's just one thing I noticed there. So these are just a few things right here that, from my opinion, make it kind of a no-brainer that I'm going to pick up this phone over this phone, right? It's not that this is a bad phone. I would pick this phone up over a lot of other phones, certainly. But if I have to choose between this S24 and this Google Pixel 8, I have to go with the S24, right? For a few different reasons there, right? Like I say, the buttons seem more intuitive and flexible to being, like I said, left-handed or right-handed, in terms of that. It doesn't have this camera bar, which, this is, in my opinion, a little more acceptable. And the cameras are comparable, probably in many ways. I think the Pixel 8 might have maybe some potential advantages in terms of the camera. This one I feel like holding it, without that glossy, this is smooth, but it's not quite like this real glossy finish, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, like a plastic finish. This might be a little more scratchable too, possibly, I'm not sure. But compared to this, which seems to be like, a full metal casing, right? So would be maybe less prone to scratching of some kind. So what else would I say about it? I haven't really compared the volume and sound on both of them. Probably both pretty good. This S24 does give me pretty good volume, pretty decent sound. I don't know if it's the best, but it's pretty darn good, right? It's a pretty good all-around package. But this is kind of what I've been waiting for, is phones to come back to the size factor. Not as crazy about this form factor. Like I said, I wish Google Pixel 8 would rethink this camera bar and somehow implement it to where it's not a protrusion out the back. If that was just a smooth back, in my opinion, that would be like, perfect. And the camera could almost be inset just a little bit in some way or another. And that way it's a little protected. Maybe there's just a thought. But it's not a bad phone. This is, it's not to knock the Pixel 8. It's a great phone. But I think they could also benefit from maybe a slightly different, I know that on the other, I think it's on the Max or something like that, or Pro, you can get like a different backing. It's not like this real smooth, shiny backing, right? A little bit more matte kind of like finish or something. And that might be preferable if you want, I think this is for a bigger phone, if you want that phone. But for this particular build, I think that they only give you this smooth backing, which, like I said, it's not terrible. It doesn't look bad, but I would prefer to have this metal casing right here that I feel like it's just one piece of metal all around holding it in place, and just it's kind of a good solid. Feels thin at first, like you're thinking, oh, this phone's so light, but it's also powerful, and it just feels like really efficient and small and powerful in the hand. Not excessive. Nothing excessive about this build. So those are just my few quick thoughts. I could probably think of some other things. Maybe you have some input on this and you have some thoughts. Maybe you've experienced both of these phones enough to give some input on what you feel are the pros and cons, and what one you would leave the house with if you have to just choose one of these. Let me know your thoughts. All right, thank you for listening in. Please like, share, comment, and support the channel. Maybe come back and maybe we'll have another video that is of interest to you. All right, see you next time. Thanks for listening in. Bye-bye.